Hello everybody and welcome to my build for the Werewolf Stamina Nightblade. So I obviously say Stamina Nightblade. Actually speaking, this could play on any class because this is built specifically for a Werewolf. I find Stamina in general a bit boring, but Werewolf is a really interesting concept in terms of theory crafting. There's a lot you can actually do with that. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting sort of playstyle. So I have made one of these long ago. And every patch, it changes quite significantly. It really does change in the way that Werewolf can work. So I can't promise this will work in the next patch, and the next, and the next. It really depends how the patches change. But for this patch right now, this Werewolf build is actually really good. I have spent a lot of time getting all the pieces together for this and sort of testing. And I think it performs good. It's got sustained healing, decent size healing, really high damage. Though, to be fair, as well, if it's kind of hard to have low damage. And it's got pretty good survivability by Werewolf standards, and the biggest counter against any Werewolf is sort of Defile and very much so Stamina Nightblade, which I'll explain in a bit, and I think it does to a good extent against that. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this build right now, and I thought I would share it with you guys to have fun on it. I should disclaim, there is also a chance that I may make another Werewolf build during this patch. This one is not Polineal based, so Polineal is like a hybrid set. Some people have wanted me to test something with Polineal in the past. In previous patches, I didn't really like it, but they want me to test it again, so I may come up with one of those if it somehow succeeds. This one definitely does succeed. It's got a really good stat base, and it works very nicely, so yeah. Okay, so our stats. Now, keep in mind, this is outside of Werewolf, firstly, and secondly, we're building for a good spread of stats. That's very important as a Werewolf. If you stack only into damage, only into sustain, only into magicka, only into stamina, etc, etc, you're going to get absolutely dicked. You have no chance whatsoever. You're basically screwed. So this is going to be our way around that and put it in a situation where it actually works. As follows, we have 15.2k magicka, health is 25k, stamina just short of 38k, spell damage 1.9k actually matters a little bit. In the end, your heal is scaling largely off your spell damage and a little off your magicka, hence we need those pulls fairly high. Our crit resist 2.7k, which is pretty sexy indeed. Our weapon damage looks low at 2.4k, but again, you have to realize that all of this is getting put as your Werewolf build. So 2.4k properly buffed is going to give us, with that amount of stamina, a 10k surprise attack tooltip. Now you can obviously get builds with higher surprise attack tooltips quite easily, but they won't work properly as a Werewolf because you'll be lacking that magicka resource to play with quite a lot. Stamina recovery, that's obviously buffed with Relentless right now, but unbuffed is a little short of 2.8. Magicka recovery, very tasty, 1.35k, which is very important for the playstyle itself. Weapon crit sitting at 32%. We're using the Atronac Mundus because we need that magic recovery very high. I even have other sources of it. We are obviously a wolf because this is a wolf build, hard not to be. And we are using Dubious Cameron for our food. So our our sets, we are using a pretty normal-ish setup here. We are in 5 Shackle Breaker with a heavy body and light belt. We need that for the magicka, obviously. And then 5 medium, 2 Bloodspawn, and then Shackle Breaker on the legs, boots, and glove. And then our other 5-piece set is Bone Pirate, which is dual-wield. You want swords here because they're easy to farm and generally they work nicer. As far as I know, the weapon passive doesn't carry into wolf form, but yeah. And that we are using Nirnhone main bar and infused back bar for that. You definitely want to get those glyphs right. Infuse the weapon damage, Nirn magicka steel, stamina steel. It doesn't matter very much since your infuse carries to your front bar with dual. Our back bar finally is a Bone Pirate 1-piece, so we are just keeping that stamina for a bit of extra healing. In the end, like I said before, it doesn't matter very much because we're Werewolf based here. Pretty much all of the time we're generating our fight around that. Last but not least, all of our glyphs on the armor are triglyph. We do need the health, we need the magicka, and the stamina is pretty good. And then our jewellery is glyphed as follows. Stamina recovery, magicka recovery, weapon damage. If you feel you are over sustaining in your magicka or stamina, you can obviously change those glyphs for for weapon damage. I like the stamina recovery. There's a lot of cost poisons out there right now. It's pretty handy to have a lot of sustain built up. It's quite ugly to play against. And then the magicka recovery I find extremely useful for when outnumbered for your healing. It's going to be very important. Our skills then are as follows. We're using Rending Slashes, the Blood Crazed Morph, for a bit of heal over time. Again, just to get to that werewolf form. Surprise Stack, your base damage. Again, it's not a massive tooltip, but 10k buffed is not that bad. Before Glyph, pretty reasonable. You could get a lot more in a normal build, but again, this is a werewolf build. I can't highlight enough because I know someone in the chat will say it. Relentless Focus is for some stamina sustain. Minor Berserk, obviously really nice skill there. Also a bit of burst. Cloak for survivability, kiteability, and again stalling towards that ulti. And then Quick Cloak for our final skill. This is really nice. It helps survivability an absolute ton in dueled, and it gives you a huge amount of damage as well. It's one of the bigger dots, but the biggest thing is this bit here, reducing your damage taken from area of effect attacks by 25%. There is a lot of things that count as area of effect. It's huge. It really makes a difference in survivability. And on top of that, we obviously also have that movement speed, which is very handy as well. Ulti, obviously, Werewolf. Back bar, then we're using Shadow Image. This is going to be for our kiting. Generally speaking, Shadow Image is a good support skill. Minor Maim does a great job. But that's, again, just stalling to our well form. Vigor for our base heal over time. Rally for our burst heal. Shuffle to remove snares, dodge chance, and fear on the back bar. Pretty normal skill bar, since none of the passives, etc. carry 12 bar anymore. Just passives that aren't related to skills. Back bar ulti, you do have a bit of option here. If you find you're lacking healing on the two-hander, mine's not none at the moment, so I have considered doing it. You could put Dawnbreaker there. I'd put Flawless, not Smiting, because you're not actually going to cast it. You're building for a Werewolf, but it gives you that extra weapon damage for a bigger rally. You could run Barrier for extra Magic Sustain, but you shouldn't really need that. Werewolf is going to give you back bar Stamina Sustain, and then you could run an Incap if you really want to run a non-Werewolf ult, but I think there's better options out there for a non-Werewolf build. I'm never going to cast Werewolf on the back bar. You always want to cast it on the front bar, so you're getting your Bone Pirate passives with that cast. One other thing to mention is my potions. So we are using a kind of a selection of potions. This is our main pot outside of Werewolf. Pretty normal. The Tripod, Magicka, Stamina, and Health. Very nice to have. But when we hit Werewolf form, you're going to find that healing can be very tough when outnumbered, especially if you get defiled. So you're going to want to run some form of lingering pot, and that is why we built our Magicka recovery so high, is because we don't have a potion to support that Magicka sustain. So good options here. This is my personal favorite at the moment: invisibility, health, and heal over time. That was very nice. I do not know the flowers to make that. I was given them. He did send them, but I forgot them. This one's also pretty good. Lingering health gives you health and major vitality for 30% extra healing for 15 seconds. Only problem is, obviously, when that second phase has gone down, you are losing that healing. So that is a bit of a struggle. And then our final pot that you may want to try, I didn't really think it was making a difference, is this one. Major Expedition and the Linger effect again. I don't know why, but I don't think I gained speed using that. But maybe I'm just silly. Werewolf has a built-in speed passive, but it's not major, so it should stack. But I don't know if that's just bugs or whether I'm just blind. Who knows? But yeah. I should show you the Werewolf skills quickly, because these are going to be important as well. So we go into your world, Werewolf, to see these. Our first is Feral Pounce. So there's two morphs available for this. One will give you a splash damage. The other will give you extra duration on your Wolf Ultimate. You really want the extra duration on the Wolf Ultimate. I didn't realise this, because actually the duration is pretty pitiful, since very rarely you're actually even going to have the Gap Closer. However, the splash damage halves the base damage anyway, so this does the same damage. So you definitely want this one. It gives you pretty useful stuff. Herkind, again, the heal, you're going to want the one that gives you weapon damage. The heal over time on that morph is simply not good enough to really be considered worthwhile. The Roar, you're definitely going to want Rousing. That's going to give you a major brutality source, so I would not go for the other one. The other one's a bit rubbish anyway, so Rousing Roar there. Howl of Agony is a no-brainer. It deals 30% more damage to enemies that are feared. That's very, very big. And then finally, both morphs of this are good. Claws of Anguish and Claws of Life. I have mixed between these a fair bit. I finally settled actually on Anguish, surprising myself even here. So Life is great. It's pretty big heal over time. It's honestly nearly a Vigor, and it can be even bigger in AoE. However, your biggest weakness, as I mentioned, is Stanblaze. Stanblaze as a Werewolf are serious problems. They are very, very difficult to fight. So if you find you're dying a lot to those builds, don't be embarrassed. Don't be upset. They're probably at a massive advantage on you, because as a Werewolf, your main defense is keeping offense when possible. This build has designed pretty reasonable defense, but it's still not going to top most other builds in terms of survivability, for example, a normal Stanblade. So you're going to struggle when they cloak, because they're going to constantly put this pressure on you. You're not actually going to be able to get control of the fight. And at the same time, they're going to be absolutely ripping you with Defile with Incap. So those two combined make Stamblade very tough to fight. Anything with Defile is pretty rough to fight against as a Werewolf, because your healing obviously is not fantastic. In the end, I went with Anguish on the grounds that most of those Defile builds are stamina. And so when you Defile someone who's stamina, their vigor, etc., they haven't got a burst heal, they haven't got shields quite as reliably as Magicka, but their heal over time is generally really strong, so they get a lot of income and healing. Breaking that down with a big Defile makes a big difference, hence I went with Anguish. Now when you're in Werewolf form, a few things to note. Firstly, the first thing you want to do in your combo is put the dot up. So light attack and dot. That's going to be a big factor. The dot is huge, and your light attack procs an even bigger bleed, as you can see on the ulti here. You're getting 16k bleed over 8 seconds. Every second you've got a 2k bleed. That's massive. And then that's stacking with Anguish. You've got huge damage coming into these guys. Once you put that bleed on, you're going to want to fear them. And when you fear them, you're going to want to do a heavy attack, not the agony wherever possible, because heavy attack gets you 100% more stamina and fear procs off balance. So with the changes to off balance, you are getting a massive amount of stamina back. You get around 12 to 15k stamina back for one heavy attack if you land that. The other option to do is to howl after that fear, especially if they're quick CC breaking, and that's going to hit really hard. I would generally try and howl after the heavy attack on most targets, but it can depend a bit. That is, in the end, your sort of spammable DPS. Now, when you are under defense, you're obviously going to use this Hurricane's Roar, but keep in mind that also buffs your damage. So if you can weave that into your sort of aggressive rotation as well, you're gaining 10% weapon damage. It's well worth casting. So do try and keep that uptime. It's 20 seconds, it's a long duration, and it's a nice buff indeed. So try and keep that there. What else have I not mentioned? True. If you find you're low on stamina and you can't land heavy attacks because they're blocking, a really, really good thing to do as well is to simply light attack spam. I know that sounds ridiculous. It truly does. But light attacks as well hit ridiculously hard. It's absolutely stupid, to be honest. I can hit on a blocking target upwards of 3k light attacks. On a non-blocking target, you can hit 8, 10k just from a light attack, and it's twice as fast as a normal light attack. So squishy targets, if you just light attack spam, you don't even need to howl, you don't need to fear, you don't need to heavy attack. Just put the dot up, put your bleed up, and light attack spam, and they literally will disintegrate. It hits so hard. So that is another option if you're low on stamina. It's not going to be quite as fast as your howl and heavy attack with a fear, but if it's someone that's blocking a lot, it's a very good way of pressurizing them quickly, because you're constantly replacing that bleed and it's still a huge amount of pressure. I think that's everything on the skills. What else have I missed? I don't know, apart from CP. Alright, let's move on to CP. If I have forgotten something, I'm sure my chat will remind me. So, CP is really, really interesting because there's a lot of passives that you wouldn't really think might be useful, but in the case of Werewolf are suddenly very, very useful. So I would always keep the CP close to or the same as I have right now. We have 44 in Warlord for CC break. Generally, people stack that to 51, 56-ish. Yeah, in the case of this build, there's too many interesting pools, so we have to spread this out a bit more. 19 in Sprinter is really important. Actually, kiting as well is going to help you an absolute ton. You can move very fast, so to try get to your line of sight, having Sprinter points is going to cheapen that quite a bit, and you will really notice that in terms of stamina sustain. In this tree here, we have to reach 120 points for this passive here. Increase your health and magic recovery by 10% while sprinting. That's going to help our magic sustain a fair bit when kiting. And then we're stacking heavily into each tree. 43 for Mooncar for stamina recovery, 37 in Arcanist for magic recovery, and 43 into Tenacity with heavy attacking a fair bit. So that is pretty useful. We then have 17 in Befoul, so that is going to give you that extra healing debuff. That is the perfect scaling point. Any more is a bit of a waste. Any less, it's a bit of a waste. So I would suggest putting that into there. That's obviously a pretty strong tree. You're gaining 5% Defile just for 17 points, so that's very, very, very strong. Finally, 37 into Tumbling, and that 37 into Tumbling is to reduce our roll dodge cost. Blue tree then, we have 32 in Blessed for the healing. That is very important because it unlocks spell precision, which is also a useful tree. Increase your spell crit by 12%. Our magic heal means magic crit is going to benefit it. You're going to increase the likelihood of a crit heal. Happy days. Middle tree, we need to reach 75 for this passive here. Butcher, increase your damage done with light and heavy attacks by 5% on enemies below 25. It's very useful, but more importantly, you're going to reach it anyway because physical weapon expert carries into werewolf, and this is how we're hitting so bloody hard with light attacks. So we put 39 points into here. Increase your damage done with light and heavy attacks for two-handed, one-hand, and shield or dual and bow weapons. We're using dual, and that carries into our hits, so definitely put the points there. 56 in Master at Arms for the direct damage. Obviously, bit of a no-brainer there. And then a bit of a spread in here. The 120 is not that important a passive, so we have 13 in Farmer Touch for our dots. I couldn't really move any other points there, otherwise I would have a bit more there. 49 in Mighty for the base and 51 for the crit. I've decided to favour that. It just gets the surprise tech tooltip quite high enough. Again, this tree is a bit more alternatable, so if you want to swap points, swap them there. I would leave those two as they are if I were you. Red tree then, again, there's some interesting passives. Resilient, as I always suggest. Any build you can get, try unlock that passive because it's very nice. When you take critical damage, heal for free 14 health. It really adds up in a long fight because crits happen all the time. It's got no cooldown. It's a nice little heal over time adding up. So to get that, we have 51 Ironclad and then the rest of the points in crit resist. We're a little extra, so you could move up to 7 points out into whatever tree you wanted. I just don't see anywhere where I want them. 40 into Thick Skinned to reduce that dot damage. But in this tree, you'll see I've taken a bit of a bias to. We're actually 49 in Hardy, very, very hard in there. And just 32 in Elemental Defender. Again, stamina, especially Stam Blades, are a big problem for you. You want to mitigate that damage as best as possible. The reason I go for Thick Skin is Templars can be a bit annoying sometimes. It's quite difficult to get out of jabs. It's quite snary. But more importantly, Stam Decays, again, they're probably going to have to fire on a lot of dots. So it's another handy tree to have. 37 in Quick Recovery, that's just for the extra healing. Again, all of that healing is pretty important. So, I think I have covered everything on this build. I hope it's useful. I will try and get some clips over time to get a video for this. I can't promise it'll be quick, because in the end, it's a tough playstyle. But I built this for people who are interested in playing something a little different to the normal classes, because in the end, to build a proper Werewolf, it really is its own class. Whichever class you play it on, however you choose to set it up, it really is its own class and it plays really, really interestingly. As I mentioned before, best class for this would be a Stam Sork. Best race, maybe Orc would be pretty good. Red Guard's pretty good. I'm a Wood Elf, which actually is not the best, but each to their own. Run what you're comfortable with. Any stamina race would be alright-ish in this. Yeah, I think I've covered everything, guys. Good luck with the build. It's a nice, interesting playstyle for you, something a bit different. Have fun, and I'll see you in the next video. Done. Excelente. So,